our theme of 1+1 will equal new members. So please remember to bring a prospective member to a meeting, perhaps in October, and then following up with them afterwards so that they will consider joining. Today is our last program focusing on the regional economy. While our economy is working for some, it is more challenging for others. As Dorothy Bullitt said in her email to you on Monday, one of the benefits of an age-diverse club is the opportunity to learn from members of different generations. Today, we're going to explore how our economy presents very different challenges from those that my generation faced when we were younger. We hope to leave time in the program for some of you to offer your own experiences and examples at the end. Before we get started, I do want to thank Logan Riley for our meeting reporting today. And Mary, do we have any guests with us?
We do. We have a good number of guests today. We have Adenike Benuo. We have Ailish Elizabeth. We have Bob Alexander from Australia. We have Jane Kay. We have prospective member Dina Butcher, who has just moved to Seattle from Bismarck, North Dakota. Welcome, Dina. And we have Kudzai Nyanjarai. So thank you and welcome, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. For people in their 30s and 40s, Seattle has become a place of higher upside, but also higher stakes. If you land a good job, if you have the skills, or you bought a house a few years ago, you might be doing very well. But the margin for error is thinner than it was 30 years ago. The cost of living, and especially housing, is such a big factor that many things that we used to take for granted have become much harder choices now. Things I never thought about 30 years ago have become realities. To take a closer look at all of this, I am very pleased to introduce past President Dorothy Bullitt, who is going to lead a discussion with some of our younger club members, Jen Gladish, Stephen Morse, and Garen Wedeking. Dorothy is a Seattle native who attended inner city public schools, including my alma mater, Garfield. After graduating, she earned a BA in History and English, a JD, and an MBA. She also holds an honorary degree, a master's in public administration, I believe from the Evans School. Dorothy is another tri-sector athlete, having had careers in business, government, and nonprofit sectors before joining the UW's Evans School as a distinguished practitioner and senior lecturer. She served as CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Chief Operating Officer at Harbor Properties, and as Assistant State Attorney General. She also wrote 2 best-selling books. Her numerous leadership awards include Women of Influence, First Citizen of Seattle with Relatives, and the Outstanding Leadership in the Community Award. Please join me in welcoming past President Dorothy Bullitt, who will introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Jan. As Jan noted, Seattle Rotary is an age-diverse club, but the life experience of one generation is not the same as another. Different generations have different opportunities while facing quite different challenges. When I attended the University of Washington in the 1970s, it was easy to cover the $180 per quarter cost of tuition by working summers, especially since I lived at home. A UW student today must rely on loans, scholarships, or independent wealth to cover the cost of college. When I bought my first home in 1982, my $25,000 salary was enough to do that. Not so today. I was also delighted to pay a 13% interest rate on my home loan instead of the 17% going rate at the time. A young adult today would be horrified to pay that interest. That said, the interest rates paid on savings accounts and bonds in the early 1980s was great when compared to those offered today. Climate change was an obscure concept in the 1970s and 80s. Yes, Earth Day was a thing, but the threats posed seemed far off and unrelated to one's calculations about whether to have children or where to live. The world seemed to be largely stable and improving, and it was easy to hope. Not so easy for young adults today. Today's meeting is intended to explore how the current economy is affecting young professionals. In particular, how are our younger members navigating an economy and world so different from the one that traditionalists, boomers, and Gen Xers faced when we were their age? By the way, in case you were wondering, this is why we included a photo of me as a young Rotarian in the announcement for this program. We can but dip our toe into this issue of the economy's impact on young professionals, but we intend to give it a try by inviting the perspective of 3 young Rotarian superstars. We hope our program will help older members understand the hurdles young professionals are facing and allow younger members to see that there is hope in our current economy, as evidenced by the experience of our 3 panelists. Our panel is comprised of Rotarians Stephen Morse, Garen Wedeking, and Jen Gladish. Stephen, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Dorothy. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So I am a local product. I was born and raised in Northeast Seattle. I went to high school at Bishop Blanchette, go Braves, and Seattle University for college, where I majored in accounting and minored in finance. Socially and recreationally, I love to sail, I love to ski, and pretty much any day on the water, whether it's on the lake or the sound, is a great day. I'm also not married and I do not have children. Professionally, my career is a story of 2 chapters. The first chapter was working toward the goal of owning and operating a business. I had that goal since I was in middle school. The focus for the first chapter was building knowledge, skills, and experience, and I was fairly ambitious with my schedule. I knew from an early age, around middle school, that that's what I wanted to do. Every step was a strategic piece for that puzzle, and chapter 1 culminated with the opportunity to actually do that. I worked on a turnaround of a small business, took about 3 years, and we accomplished our goals. And then in 2020, I took on the next challenge to plan personal finances for individuals, families, and business owners. And I found planning to be my calling over these past 5 years and haven't looked back. And I love every second of this profession.
Thank you. Garen, how would you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Dorothy. Yeah, and thanks, Stephen. My name is Garen Wedeking. I was born in Kirkland, Washington, raised there by a single mother and an older brother, and a big extended family, which I'll talk about later too. I graduated from Lake Washington High School, so public schools all the way through. Then I went directly to UW, studied under the Comparative History of Ideas, if anybody knows that tiny little school. And that was a kind of a classic 4-year degree, which took me longer than that, but it was definitely the very classic type. And then I spent the early part of my career, or at least a first career, in restaurants in the Seattle area. Always happy to talk about food and beverage, so talk to me on the side about that if you're interested. And then I went and got my MBA from UW as well, so I went back. And then got married right before started, bought a house during, and had my kid at the end. And then since we've had a second child, and we live in the Wallingford district, my career now and since school number 2 has been building a career in about 1/3 finance, 2/3 IT, most of it consulting.
Thank you. Jen, would you please introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I am so happy to be here. I'm Jen Gladish, born and raised in Barstow, California, smack dab in the middle of the high desert, so not locally grown like everyone here. I grew up in a home environment that looks so much different than what I have created for my own kids. I am now the Community Development Lending Officer for First Interstate Bank, proud member of the Wellspring Family Services Board, the Harvest Against Hunger Board, and the ARCOS Board, this very board. And I'm a single mom with 3 incredible daughters, a nearly 13-year-old and twins that just turned 10 2 weeks ago. I am also a competitive powerlifter, a soccer player, and a PSIA certified ski instructor in my absolute abundance of spare time.
Garen, you put yourself through college, didn't you? Would you share a bit about the journey you took?
Sure. So like I said, I started UW right out of high school. I put myself through college. I worked the whole time in restaurants, but I also had some small but very material family help during that time. Later, I went back to get my MBA, and I did have family support as well. Took on some small student debt that I was then able to service later. So kind of looking at what I was going through, and I think Dorothy was talking about college in the 70s. First, it was college starting 2000, early 2000s, and then it was college in the teens. And now today in 2025, the landscape has changed quite a bit from those kind of inflection points. And now I would say that, some advice to people who might be coming out of high school right now or thinking about a career change is that a 4-year degree is absolutely something that should be on the table, but it's not the only path. There's trade schools, tech schools, directly into the workforce. A gap year is always a positive. 2-year degrees, and then any kind of hybrid, maybe figuring out what you want to do. And because Dorothy mentioned the cost of college as it compares to a fraction of the median income has gone up astronomically. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jen, you took a different path to college. Would you tell us about it?
Yeah, I love sharing about this because there are so many options. And I think that having options within even that 4-year university program is also something to look at. I was a young mom and my life really trended toward raising children, and I was really focused on them. That did take away from my educational dreams. I actually just graduated in 2023 with my bachelor's degree in business administration and management from Western Governors University. There, you pay by the 6-month term, and you can complete as many units as you possibly can within that time frame. It took me just 9 months and cost about $8,000. I was doing at least 2 hours of school work every night as a single mom after the little ones were in bed. So there's a lot of statistics that they post directly on their website that show the reasonable time frame that people are regularly finishing, and I far exceeded that. But that was something that really worked for me financially. And if you know me, you know that's the kind of person I am anyway.
That sounds like a lot of work. Stephen, how do you speak to your clients about college planning?
Yeah, so here are just some figures for us. This is straight from USA Today. The average cost of a year of college in 1971 from a public university was about $1,400. The median wage was about $4,400, and 11% of the population had a degree. And then fast forward to 2018, the average college cost of a public university was about $21,000, and the average wage was about $53,000, and 35% of the population had a degree. So these figures illustrate the trend of the cost of college has increased as a percentage of average income. So increasing from about 25% of income to about 50% of income. And more people hold degrees, increasing from 1 in 10 to about 1 in 3. And then if you use debt to finance the cost, that only makes the numbers that much further apart. So in our conversations with our clients, we approach college planning actually with a very open mind. If the desired field absolutely requires a degree, then it can be a sound investment. But it's no longer taken for granted that a college degree is a prerequisite for a secure financial future. And in fact, it can actually be a significant hindrance now to that goal.
Thank you. Let's talk about homeownership. Jen, didn't you recently buy your first home?
Yeah, sounds like 2023 was a big year for me since I graduated with my bachelor's degree, but this is also the year that I bought my first home. So I'm now a proud West Seattleite. I did buy after they fixed that bridge. All of us that are in the area would know. But a unique perspective is that my work really centers around this at community development and home ownership. So I travel a 14-state footprint where I work with governmental agencies and nonprofits that support individuals and families that are facing hardships. These can be food insecurity, domestic violence, housing instability, the list goes on. I do this so that I can provide them, the people that are receiving services, with education and create products and solutions that create homeownership realities for people. But I'll say, even with that as my professional background, buying my first home as a single mom, a sole income household was really, really hard. It took every bit of my professional expertise to navigate this. I'm so happy with my choice, but I'm really grateful that having this experience myself, buying a home and it being so hard, helps to inform and empower the work that I get to do in communities across my footprint.
Thank you. How about you, Garen? Do you own a home?
So I may have mentioned briefly in the intro, we bought a home in 2013,
Oh, right. Yeah.
which I cannot take credit for that stroke of luck. That is market timing at its best, probably in the last maybe not quite 20 years, something like that. Or maybe anyway. My wife and I had some personal savings. We both had a little bit of inheritance. We had some family gifting and a creative mix of mortgage, like classic mortgage, and also family financing at a barely legally low rate. All of that together allowed us to buy our home in Wallingford. We, through a lot of generosity, charity, and good luck and good decisions, we were able to do that. We've since paid it off, so we own our house outright, which not a lot of 42-year-olds do, but I don't know if that's a pip on my collar or not. And what I like to return back to is that if I and my wife, in our current financial situation, which is much better than it was 10 years ago, tried to buy our home today, no chance. Wouldn't even get through the bank door. And so I think that's a really important perspective to have for people who are just one half of a generation younger than me, who are going to find themselves trying to buy a home in their early 30s.
Thank you. Stephen, what about you?
Yep. So I personally rent, and here are also a few figures for us. So according to CNBC, in 1975, the average home was about $20,000 in 1975 figures.
Should be listening.
And the average income was about 7,000. So that's about a third. Income was about a third of the house, of the value of the house, or the price of the house. And then fast forward to 2024, these are national figures, so definitely not Seattle figures. Average home price was about 420,000, and average income was about 75,000. So 75,000 is about 1/6 of the price. So again, the change relative to income has been significant. And if we think about sale price or house prices in Seattle, take that 1/6 and just turn it into 1/12 before you even start thinking. So similar to the cost of college, we speak with our clients about the cost of primary residence with a very open mind. Generally, our discussions are centered around their children or whether to pay off their mortgage, but the rules have changed. On a personal front, I'm more focused on building liquid assets that can compound year over year, that will be the engine for my income in 30 years. The faster I can accumulate liquid assets, then the more compounds my liquid assets will have, which is rule of 72, which we'll talk about later. Primary residence that I own is a secondary priority. It's still a priority, but it's second for my personal retirement planning. I actually, in a perfect scenario, will build a liquid asset base and then have enough cash flow from my profession to use a 15-year fixed mortgage with a 20% down on my primary residence. And this will reduce the cost of mortgage insurance and interest rate expense over the course of my whole life. So when we speak with our clients about their retirement plans, we always designate whether their primary residence will be sold to pay for their daily expenses, think groceries, electricity bill, or not. There is so much focus on owning a home that we have not fully yet appreciated and discussed openly the importance of saving a sufficient principal amount that will produce income in our later years. Homeownership is a high priority, but for me personally, it's a second priority. Probably also because I don't have kids though. So that's an important caveat.
Thank you. Garen and Jen, you have kids. Please tell us about your childcare experiences, starting with Garen.
Sure. Yeah, happy to talk about it. So kind of similar to the rest of our story, my wife and I are, kind of feeling scrappy, tried to find childcare. We were both in restaurants when our first kid was born. And I was just transitioning careers. And so, she was working nights and I was working days, and she'd drop off and I'd pick up, and the rhythm kind of carried us through a couple years until we had our second child, and I was starting to improve my career. And she came home and then did the stay-at-home mom thing for a little while, and then headed back to work for a minute, and then the pandemic happened. And so from a financial standpoint, we definitely balanced it out and made it work. But that was also 10 to 7 years ago. And the landscape has changed even since then. And I think we were paying $1,800 a month for, and that's for 2 kids at one point, for a pretty good school. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find that for just about anything today.
Thank you. Jen.
Yeah. A few years ago, $1,800 would have sounded really great to me. So when you talk about 7 years ago, I can attest to that. So when I became a single mom, we were living in Japan previously. So I moved back to the greater Seattle area, and I got into a different line of work than I had been in before. I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years prior to this. So I got into banking pretty quickly, but it was quite literally a part-time teller job for a short time. And I used every bit, and I mean every penny of my savings to put my children in childcare. And I moved here in the summer. It was June of 2018. And full-time care for 3 children ran me about $6,000 a month. So I gave myself enough time and money and runway to build up my career over a summer to be able to make a livable wage in Seattle. And while I was doing this planning, and while I was progressing and very quickly in my career, I was starting to seek out different options. And one of those was getting an au pair. I know I've talked to many of you about this, but I had 5 au pairs over time, and this was incredibly cost effective. But I did have to move. I had to move to make sure that I had a place for them, because they have to have their own room, and you pay for their food and such too. But the real benefit to this was that I was healing a childhood wound that I had in caring for these young 18, 19, 20-year-old girls, while they were giving my children so much love and care and taking incredible care of them. And without my au pairs, that I was paying hardly anything, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today. So this is my plug that women are absolutely incredible. There are male au pairs too, but this ran me in total less than $2,000 a month. And I could go to work and not have to worry about picking my kids up from daycare by 6 o'clock or paying a $25 per kid fee when the bank didn't even close until 6 o'clock. So there's a lot of things I was juggling, and I am so happy to share. My children are old enough now, I don't have to pay anything for childcare.
Thank you. Stephen, what does smart retirement planning look like at the moment?
Yeah. So smart retirement planning, it's a function of the time value of money and then saving or reducing costs. So with our clients, we talk about retirement planning with as much common sense as possible. Yes, we implement tax strategies, philanthropic strategies, estate planning strategies, as well as business sale planning when it's applicable. However, we make a concerted effort to stay grounded with common sense leading our conversations. So smart retirement planning is about having enough assets to support your daily expenses. We talk about where you're going to take the dollars to pay for your groceries, your electricity bill, etc. If we're saving over a lifetime to achieve the goal of retirement, then we talk about the rule of 72. We talk about how much you're spending. So the rule of 72 is the simple math of compound interest. If your portfolio returns 7.2% or 7%, the math is it will be twice as much in 10 years. So 100,000 will be 200,000 after 10 years. And conversely, if your portfolio returns 10%, it will double in 7 years. So a smart retirement preparation plan has a goal of a lump sum that will be able to generate enough cash flow without invading itself, the principal, and at a date in the future that we want that amount to be ready to go. So that is a function of taking some risk, but more importantly, a smart spending plan so you can save money. And smart retirement planning, once you are retired, is a smart spending plan that allows your principal to be maintained. And if the market has a pullback or a correction, you're not putting undue pressure on your principal and you can let it recover. And then personal financial security is all about saving money and letting it grow. Avoid depreciating assets unless they float and spend less than your assets can support so you can avoid, again, undue pressure on your principal.
So you may have covered this, but can people diversify or stabilize their income in particularly uncertain times when there's a lot of upheaval going on? And if so, how?
Yeah, a couple of different thoughts about that are this is where it's nice where we don't put too much pressure on the principal if possible, which gives us some flexibility. But also insurance can play a role in some of these situations. This is where property liability insurance could be a role, possibly disability insurance, business insurance, long-term care insurance, life insurance, all have a place in the plan. And we actually say, so we make the plan, we design the plan, and then we insure the plan appropriately.
And are your clients open to that, to invest money in insurance against medical crisis or accident, some unforeseen event, or do they resist because it seems to be tying up more money than they are
Yeah.
comfortable?
Some of the insurances are very self-evident, but oftentimes there's an education process about what is the role. And then we actually look at how the insurance benefit balances out the overall structure of kind of assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And sometimes they can reduce the volatility or the risk in the overall situation. A perfect example is long-term care insurance. We actually talk about if you have assets already, so if you don't have the assets in place, long-term care insurance is not the priority. Accumulating your savings is, but if you have assets, it might make sense to insure maybe half of the estimated amount of long-term care. So big picture insurance, you want to reduce the cost. It really is, all of the insurances are risk mitigation mechanisms. So we don't want to pay more than we need to or than makes sound sense.
That makes sense. Garen, is there anything else you'd like to share with the group before we start to invite members of the audience to talk about their experiences or ask questions?
Sure. I was, thinking about what Stephen said about retirement planning. I think it's first of all, I have an MBA. I completely agree with everything he said. Fundamentally, the theory's there and those are the products and it's how it works. And it's how it works for a lot of people on this call, a lot of people in Rotary. But I think it's very important in these conversations to talk about the people who aren't at the table and maybe aren't in the room. In Rotary, we talk about, is it fair? Is it just for everybody here? Is it just, but is it just for everybody that it concerns? And I think that it's very important to talk about who's invited to the table. A lot of what I talked about through today, if you tally it all up, it's family, luck. I don't come from wealth, and neither does my wife, but we certainly don't come from poverty, right? And so there are these options and these opportunities that were available to us that we chose that are not available to other people. And so retirement planning, I think, is another one of those, which it's very easy to choose the right thing on a menu when the menu is handed to you. And so I don't know what the answer is to that, but I think it's important that we talk about, all sides of these things.
How about you, Jen?
Yeah.
Would you add anything on any of the topics we've covered or a different one?
Yeah, I think that to close, I really want to make sure that everybody that's here in this virtual room understands the piece of the puzzle that you can own when we talk about the financial landscape of right now. So share a little bit about myself. I did not grow up in a home of love and support. I grew up in a home of constant anger and fear. My home was one of physical abuse, substance abuse, and alcoholism. And this was all that I knew, genuinely all that I knew. I was emancipated at 15 because that was not going to be my life, though the anger does not just leave you. You have to work away from that. So now I walk into this room, this virtual room today, and many of you have seen me get choked up on several occasions, and I'm trying not to do that now, but I cannot make any promises. That's because this room is full of care and support, which looks so much different than anger and fear. It's often very overwhelming, and I'm proud of that, but it's important for me to leave you all with the knowledge that you have expanded the view that I have of myself. Take a second. You all have helped me feel the confidence that I need to be successful, to excel in my career, to fight for what I believe in, and to give my time philanthropically. Your mentorship and support is not just beneficial to me. This is why it's important and why I'm sharing this through tears is you never know someone's circumstances. So what you can give and provide to them with your expertise, your retirement planning, your budgeting, your MBA, your law degree, any of these things are gifts. And you may not always know who needs those, because I know my first couple of years as a Rotarian, I would have never put myself out this vulnerably to you all. I would have presented as the person I wanted to be. But this has helped me to get there. And I'm going to not be embarrassed about this for the rest of the day, but we're going to pass it on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen. Stephen, do you have anything more you'd like to share?
Well, I don't know how I can go after that. We left
Yeah.
Jen.
Just start crying.
Yeah.
Oh, watch out, it might.
Mhm.
But just just a last thought. Back to kind of boring facts and figures. Is just the way kind of our life has, or kind of our environment has changed over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, specifically around spending. So 50s and 60s, in the 50s and 60s, think about TVs. They were pieces of furniture. They were not in every home. Families had one car, maybe two. The kids didn't have cars. Phones were hardlined. There were no cell phones. So the things that money was spent on was far less. On a personal note, like I wore hand-me-downs when I was a kid because I had a lot of older cousins in the neighborhood. And the thought was, we lived in Laurelhurst. I went to a private school, but if you don't need to spend money, don't. Now think about 2025. We eat out all the time. We all have cell phones, which we replace every 2 years, even if they're fine, because I don't know, that's a whole nother topic. We fly as if it's nothing. We have Amazon, so every day is Christmas. TV subscriptions, we have 2 to 6 subscriptions. So, and then children, the cost of children. You don't just kick them out and go drink by the hose. You have soccer, it's pay to play. You have camps. So it's changed a lot of how many things there are to spend money on today in 2025. And then on top of that, credit cards are everywhere. So, young people have access to money that they don't actually have, which again just adds a whole nother layer. So it's just, I think it's worth noting just how our spending has been able to change over the last 50 years.
Very interesting point. Something that we have not covered today and that I think should be raised before we open it up for comments from the group, is about the cost of philanthropy. That my family was so philanthropic through their activism, but also through their giving when I was growing up, that it was something that I always did, even as a college student, even as a high school student, from my babysitting money, that I just got in the habit of giving money to causes I believed in. And when I was teaching at the university, I made a point in introducing people to financial planning as a side benefit with seminar, but also to getting in the habit of investing a little bit in philanthropy, even when people were earning very little money, so not to get stuck feeling like you never have enough. And I wondered if any of the rest of you would like to talk about that, how that was, how you've thought about that.
I would love to add, and I also need Stephen's expertise so I can get into a better position, but that's a story for another year. I tell people regularly, and I'm very open with this, I exhaust every penny that I have on a monthly basis, raising children on a single income. And right now I'm in a position where I can give time, but not money. And I'm doing this because my philanthropic time that I give to boards and such are helping to develop my professional career so that I can make more money. Because one day I hope that I can go be retired and sitting on a beach in Mexico drinking margaritas all day, and my money is the replacement for my time. There is a time and a place for everything, and it's not everybody's time to give money. But my children have their own philosophies around this, and they are little entrepreneurs. Don't call the city of Seattle because they do all of these things unpermitted, but lemonade stands, car washing, bracelet and earring sales, bookmark making. They do all of these things, and they almost always find a way to spend money on a cause that is helpful. So they're very involved in Wellspring Family Services with me. So they like to make kits to hand out to people that are currently facing homelessness. So not every brand of giving has to be the same, and you can be proud of that too. And then the board work that I do, I'm making sure that I'm procuring donations from other people, be it my institution or others, to supplement the fact that I don't have a couple of dollars to give.
Thank you. That's very well put. Stephen, Garen, do either of you have a pressing desire to speak to this before we move to the group?
I'll just say briefly that I can't give as much as I would like to give also because I'm in the building phase as well. I give what I can. And I'll say that I didn't really donate a lot before this career change because I was just not really doing service. It's been a massive part of kind of my mindset though now. There's something about giving that makes me feel like the world is a giving place.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, I highly recommend it to anybody else, even if it's just a small amount, whatever's a meaningful amount.
Great. All right. Well, let's open this up to the group. Have you people here have comments about your own experience tackling building a career, going to college during a different era, or a question you'd like to pose to a member of our panel?
We have a Kudzai Nagirai has her hand up.
Okay. Hello. Well, good evening from Zimbabwe on the other side of the
Hi,
world.
thank you so much for attending.
Hi, I'm Kudzai from the Rotary Club of Valley Central. And my first comment is a different part of the world, but the stories are dead similar. My parents had a mortgage by 33, and I can't even afford a house at 45. But it's just amazing how it's the same everywhere. But I wonder whether the panelists feel that while our generation is economically, we are comparatively in a lower position to our parents. There's also so much opportunity in the world. It's ironic that so much opportunity to then catapult you, but at the same time, it's like two ironic situations exist at the same time. And I'm wondering if this is the same thing the panelists are experiencing in America.
Stephen, do you have a thought about that?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I would agree with it. The numbers have changed a little bit, but the number of opportunities is extremely high. I think it's why everyone kind of in their 20s, 30s, 40s is thinking so creatively also. There's a lot of kind of side opportunities, a little more like everyone's a little more entrepreneurial now. So yeah, that's a good point. So the numbers might have changed macroly, but we can be very creative, especially with the internet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, quick follow up on that. Let's see. I agree that these patterns do seem to be global, and this panel is very much a United States or even West Coast of the United States centric. So I really appreciate the folks that are on and sharing more global point of view. But yeah, it's the tension between there's more opportunity today than there ever has been, and things seem to be, and on paper often are, harder, more expensive. And what I think that you put those two things together, and what you get is a ratio, and it's a risk ratio, where risks cost more when you lose lately. And I could go into this. I have opinions on it, but I won't put them all out now. But and the risk, the payoff for these risks can be higher in today's environment through, I think, distributed technologies like Stephen was talking about. The internet is a really good example. And then what has been deemed the grind culture, or the gig economy, is another version of that. But again, those are PhDs. We can talk about ad nauseum, but that's just kind of my opinion on why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Thank you, Karen. Are there other comments or questions from the group?
Dorothy, in the chat, we have a question from Jeff Borick. He would be interested to know the panelist's point of view as to how AI technologies are impacting their professional lives.
I'll share. This question's from Jeff, so this is funny. I was not using AI at work, even though we had one dedicated one that was approved. We can use banking, so we're really strict there. Until Jeff actually sent me something from IBM that said, this is a little overview about AI. This was a couple of years ago, and how to use it safely. And I will say that I do have a bit of nerves around AI and what it can do. But in my world of work, it is really helping to have more consistent approvals with credit, more consistent declinations. It's easier for us to identify and see trends so that we can see if maybe there's an opportunity for us to adjust our products, our underwriting criteria, or look at what we need to be doing to better support our communities in any given area, to provide us with data that's a lot quicker than what we would do if we were piecemealing that together ourselves. So that's a really big value add. And I love to write. It makes me very happy. I find joy in it. But when I can write something for work and then stick it into Copilot and have it spit something out for me that's super quick, it's making my work a lot more efficient. So while scary, I definitely see the benefit, and I am using it regularly as a value add.
I just spoke to someone this past weekend who knows a young person who right out of college got a tech job for $300,000 a year in their early 20s. And that young person was laid off because of AI. And they are having a terrible time trying to accept the jobs that are now available to them at a much lower salary. And it caused me to think this could be this particular aspect of AI and a swiftly changing tech economy could be quite demoralizing to some younger people who didn't gradually make their way in the world, but came in at such a high level of salary.
I'll just add that one little aside to that point is we might be surprised by how many people have nice cars, are young, have great salaries, and don't have savings.
Sure.
And it's amazing what the tech industry specifically has done to our area in particular. So I just think that's a really astute point, Dorothy, that we might not even know the ramifications of for maybe 10 more years. And then kind of separate for the profession, AI is not allowed in our work right now, at least for us, because there's proprietary, client confidentiality. And so we're not using it yet, but we're looking at it. I can see it absolutely making a huge difference in the efficiency of what we do. And so I'm absolutely anticipating in the next 10 years and 20 years for frankly the number of financial advisors overall to decrease, or maybe that ratio of advisor to client to change significantly. So I think we're in the first inning of seeing the impacts.
There's one more question in the chat I'd like to share. This is from David Bobanek. What role does a Rotary membership play in your professional and social life now? And how can Rotary be improved to better fit and support your current situation?
Who wants to take that one?
You want to, Stephen?
Sure. Well, it's a pretty big part of my life now. Socially, it's a significant amount of time, and I'll just say that Rotary has added a whole layer of richness to life that I didn't even know about before I joined. I share Jen's sentiments quite a bit that it's an incredible group of people that we get to be with that are positive, smart, hardworking, share just interests, and you are who you spend time with. So on a personal level, it's great people, great conversations, assimilating. Professionally, that just happens with good people that are working hard, doing the same thing. I think good things happen. And I think to actually Bob Alexander's point before we started,
the Australian Bob Alexander.
Yes. Or down under Bob Alexander. A lot of people don't know. They just don't know. I think it's almost the best kept secret.
Thank you. Okay, we are 20 past, and I think it's time for us to turn the program back to Jan. Thank you, panelists, Garen, Stephen, and Jan. You did great, and I feel so enriched from the experience of working with you on this panel. So thank you. Jan.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Jen and Garen and Stephen. You've given us a lot to think about. And I should note, as John Steckler pointed out in the Seattle Times today, I think the median income for a family now in Seattle is $250,000. So we're on the high end. As a thanks for your participation today, our club's foundation is providing 600 servings of healthy produce to those in needs through Harvest Against Hunger in your name. Thanks again to those of you who have already donated. And I look forward to seeing the rest of you donate. I also want to thank REB Enterprises and Carl Benke for their meeting support this year. Thanks to Bloodworks Northwest and the Baird, the Westland Morse Group for their sponsorship support. Nicole Klein, do you have some announcements for us today?
Yes. So thank you for that panel. That was really great. So our next lunch meeting will be in person at the WAC We'll have United Way of King County to kick us off with our Basic Needs Month. We will have also an introduction to our SRSF and TRF giving campaign. And we will be having, I've seen a flurry of emails, but we can't talk about it just yet. If you're looking for something social, and Stephen's been busy with Jan coordinating our evening monthly event. So stay tuned for that. Then our Wednesday, October 15th lunch meeting will be at the WAC as well, featuring our new King County executive, Shannon Braddock, who I have not yet met. Get ready for that. October 22nd, we'll be back on Zoom, and that will be featuring our SRSF community partners, Harvest Against Hunger, and the Rotary Boys and Girls Club. So those are two that we know well, but we need to know more about. So that's it.
Thank you, Nicole. You know, when I was young, I couldn't wait to get out of the house and become independent. I moved to New York City, and I shared my first apartment with 3 other women. It was a 1-bedroom shared by all 4 of us. Do not ask me what happened when one of us had a male friend over. It never occurred to me that I would ever live with my parents again. Today, I know several people whose kids have graduated from college and they're still living at home. They can't find jobs that will support them. As we've heard from our panel today, the world is a very different place these days. Back then, I thought that sharing a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates was a big challenge. These days, your roommates might be your parents. Independence isn't just about moving out. It's about figuring out how to pay for it. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you for our guests from Australia and Zimbabwe. That's pretty exciting. And I look forward to seeing you all on October 1st at the WAC when we're beginning our look at basic needs. We are adjourned.